Hey, everybody. I'm backstage. I'm going to have to put you on a stand. Everything's going to be fine, though. But right now I'm backstage, and I'm about to start the show. There's my friend Laura, who just tried to hide, but there she is. And there's my friend Adam. He's got a Dr. Pepper and everything. I mean, I think of you as a friend. Maybe Adam doesn't think of me as a friend.
Definitely.
And we're going to do this thing. But we have to wait till Elise knows. We're going this way? Okay, we're going this way. So I got to simultaneously, I'm using a lot of technology because in addition to talking to you, I also have to talk to my friend Henry, who says I'm here. Okay. Henry to answer here. I'm ready whenever y'all are ready. Where am I going?
You're gonna go this way.
I'm going that way. Yeah. Great. But we'll wait until it's time.
Yes.
I love that. Henry, it'll be a couple more minutes, okay? But I'll let you know. I'm doing good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Congratulations on your great exams.
Wow, I'm so happy.
I'm very proud of you. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. I'm really happy because it's really not easy.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not easy. So you're doing great, though. Proud of you. All right, here we go. All right, just one more minute.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, perfect. I'm joined by a friend, a special guest, who wants to say hello to begin the show. And so here he is, Henry Ryder, everybody.
You guys out there need to start to support people out there, right? When you share out to others, you create an impact, right? You don't forget to. Oh no!
The internet isn't that good. Okay, Henry, we'll talk to you later. So this is a book about tuberculosis, but it's also a book about that one human individual, Henry Ryder, who you just got to meet, and it's the story of Henry's desperate attempt to survive tuberculosis, a disease that we've known how to cure since the 1950s, and which he contracted 60 years later. For me, this book began with meeting Henry, and so I wanted this evening to begin with you meeting him. Before I read a little bit of the book, just so that you can plausibly say you attended a book reading, I want to thank you for doing the heroic work of getting out of bed and making yourself go outside and all that stuff. That's not easy, especially now. I know that, and yet here we are finding ways to go on and perhaps finding meaning and community along the way. And that's what I hope tonight will bring for you, an opportunity to reflect in community on the world we've built and the worlds we might build instead. So now I'm going to read to you from my book, but I realize that I don't have a copy, so I'm going to borrow one from this person. It's the great thing about being in a room full of 1,500 books. This is about the first time I visited Bacana Government Hospital in Sierra Leone, when at the time I didn't know that tuberculosis was still a thing. I didn't know that there were tuberculosis hospitals. I didn't know that tuberculosis killed 1.25 million people every year. When we arrived at Bacana, we were immediately greeted by a child who introduced himself as Henry. "That's my son's name," I told him, and he smiled. Most Sierra Leoneans are multilingual, but Henry spoke particularly good English, especially for a kid his age, which made it possible for us to have a conversation that could go beyond my few halting phrases of Credo. I asked him how he was doing, and he said, "I am happy, sir. I am encouraged." He loved that word, and who wouldn't? Encouraged, like courage is something we rouse ourselves and others into. My son Henry was 9 then, and this Henry looked about the same age, a small boy with spindly legs and a big goofy smile. He wore shorts and an oversized rugby shirt that reached nearly to his knees. Henry took hold of my t-shirt and began walking me around the hospital. He showed me the lab where a technician was looking through a microscope. Henry looked into the microscope and then asked me to, as the lab tech, a young woman from Freetown, explained that this sample contained tuberculosis, even though the patient had been treated for several months with standard therapy. The lab tech began to explain standard therapy to me, but Henry was pulling on my shirt again. He walked me through the wards, a complex of poorly ventilated buildings that contained hospital rooms with barred windows, thin mattresses, and no toilets. There was no electricity in the wards, and no consistent running water. To me, the rooms resembled prison cells. Before it was a TB hospital, Lacan was a leprosy isolation facility, and it felt like one. Inside each room, 1 or 2 patients lay on cots, generally on their side or back. A few sat on the edges of their beds, leaning forward. And all these men, the women were in a separate ward, were thin. Some were so emaciated that their skin seemed wrapped tightly around bone. As we walked down a hallway between buildings, Henry and I watched a young man drink water from a plastic bottle and then immediately vomit a mix of bile and blood. I instinctively turned away, but Henry continued to stare at the man. I figured Henry was someone's kid, a doctor maybe, or a nurse, or one of the cooking or cleaning staff. Everyone seemed to know him, and everyone stopped their work to say hello and rub his head or squeeze his hand. I was immediately charmed by Henry. He had some of the same mannerisms of my son, the same paradoxical mixture of shyness and enthusiastic desire for connection. Henry eventually brought me back to the group of doctors and nurses who were meeting in a small room near the entrance to the hospital, and then one of the nurses lovingly and laughingly shooed him away. "Who is that kid?" I asked. "Henry," answered a nurse, "the sweetest boy. He's one of the patients we're worried about," said a physician who went by Dr. Michael. "He's a patient?" I asked. "Yes." "He's such a cute little kid," I said. I hope he's going to be okay." Dr. Michael told me that Henry wasn't a little kid. He was 17. He was only so small because he'd grown up malnourished, and then the TB had further emaciated his body. "He seems to be doing okay," I said. "Lots of energy. He walked me all around the hospital." "This is because the antibiotics are working," Dr. Michael explained, "but we know they are not working well enough. We are almost certain they will fail, and this is a big problem." He shrugged, tight-lipped. There was a lot I didn't understand. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you again for being here. Thank you to Books A Million for making tonight possible. There are lots of books available for sale on your way out, including books written by me, all of which I have signed, because I do hate an unsigned book. I'm so grateful to be here with y'all tonight, and so fortunate to have Adam Grant as my conversation partner, one of my very favorite podcasters, writers, and people. Adam Grant is an organizational psychologist and best-selling author who explores the science of motivation, generosity, rethinking, and potential. He is the best-selling author of 6 books that have sold millions of copies and been translated into many languages, including Hidden Potential, Think Again, Give and Take, Originals, Option B, and Power Moves. Adam's books are also available for sale from Books A Million, and I can't recommend them enough. Everybody, Adam Grant.
Well, this is unusual. Thank you for welcoming me to my city, John Green.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for being here, Adam.
Can we do a proper welcome to Philly to John Green?
Congratulations on your big win in the
Did I just hear you root for the Eagles?
well, I mean, I am from Indianapolis, but I rooted for the Eagles in the Super Bowl.
Well, let's take it. Let's take it. John, welcome to Philly. It's such a treat to have you here. I'm sorry we're short cheesesteaks.
That's all right. I only eat beef 5 days a year, so.
We do have Dr. Pepper.
I know we got Dr. Pepper.
So, I was trying to figure out how you came up with the title for this book and how you chose your topic. And I noticed when you were just a novelist, you almost always use monosyllabic words like the fault in our stars.
Oh,
And
I've never noticed this before.
But then you went nonfiction, and Advocacy came.
Yeah, which, by the way, not a great title.
But tuberculosis is going up in the syllables further. Is that why?
And everything has 3 syllables. Tuberculosis is even longer. I wanted to call it Everything is Tuberculosis. It's actually a misread, so I called it Everything is About Tuberculosis, which is something my wife often says to me, that in my mind everything is about tuberculosis, and tuberculosis is about everything, which is true. I mean, you saw it on the screen before as I was coming on stage. Injustice is tuberculosis. Extractive capitalism is tuberculosis. So much is tuberculosis. Geography is tuberculosis. I could go on. But my editor said, I really enjoyed your book, Everything is Tuberculosis. And I was like, well, that's a much better title. So that's the story of how that came to be the title.
Why?
Well, because everything is tuberculosis, man. I mean, there's nothing that tuberculosis doesn't touch. You're looking at Dr. Pepper. Charles Alderton was a pharmacist, right? I mean, he wanted to make a soda that smelled the way that, or tasted the way that the soda fountain in Waco, Texas smelled. But he was a chemist at heart. He was a pharmacist. He dispensed medicines for tuberculosis. Dr. Pepper is freaking tuberculosis. There's very little that I can't. I was in Indianapolis a few days ago, and somebody was like, "Can you connect the Indy 500 to tuberculosis?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me? The winner of the 1931 Indy 500 died of tuberculosis in 1935." It was Louis Schneider.
Why do you know that?
I mean, it's all I've thought about for the last 4 years. Like my wife jokes that like for the last 4 years she looks over and she's like, "What book about tuberculosis is he reading now?" I just think for me, it's not even about TB, to be honest with you. It's not like I'm especially fascinated by the bacterium, although it is a really interesting bacterium. It's a really, I mean, I know there's some infectious disease doctors in the room, and you get, yeah, woo! It's actually more new than I expected. If anybody comes down with something, we know where to go. I should explain to the infectious disease doctors in the room that there's also a lot of people who are like wearing my face on their torsos, and that's normal. That's okay. And there's a lot of inside jokes that you won't get tonight, but don't feel like that's us excluding you. That's us trying to welcome you, because we actually need many more infectious disease doctors in our community, which is called Verifiteria. We kind of over-index on librarians and teachers, and we under-index on infectious disease doctors. So,
Well, if anyone can make bacteria interesting, it's your job.
yeah, so that's right. I'm not that interested in the bacteria itself. What interests me about tuberculosis is that to me it's the exemplary disease of injustice. It's a disease that only exists because we allow it to exist. It's been curable since the 1950s. We know how to eliminate tuberculosis from communities because we've largely, we've reduced the burden of tuberculosis in the United States by over 99% in the last 60 or 70 years. And so we know how to reduce the burden of tuberculosis really radically, and we kind of choose not to and I'm interested in what that says about us. I think that when I came home from visiting Lacan for the first time, what I wanted to understand, why I started reading and thinking and writing about tuberculosis, was I wanted to understand what's wrong with my information feed, that I didn't know this was the world's deadliest infectious disease, and also what's wrong with the human-built systems that surround me, that I'm allowing this to continue, and that all of us together, not to blame you, but I do want to implicate you because we're all part of this story, that we're allowing this to continue.
I don't know a lot of people who can implicate me in human suffering and death and make me feel okay about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you are part of the story, unfortunately. But so am I, so is everybody watching this on live stream. Like, we're all part of the story because we choose this world together. Now, of course, individually, we have very limited power, and I'm sure right now many of you feel, as I do, utterly powerless and overwhelmed by the scope of the challenges we face. But together we are actually quite powerful. I've seen that. I've seen that story unfold within our community of Nerfiteria, and I've seen it unfold in the human story.
Well, talk to us a little bit about how we can leverage that power, because I think for reading this book, your other books have touched a lot of lives. This one is going to save a lot of lives.
Thanks, Alan. That's very kind of you to say. I hope that's true. Right now, it feels very far from the truth because right now we're taking, I kind of think of human health as a really long staircase. And we walk up that staircase slowly. We started out with Hippocrates telling his students not even to bother treating tuberculosis, which he called phthisis, because it was too difficult a disease to treat, and his students would appear to be bad healers if they even attempted to treat it. And then we walked up the ladder, the staircase a little bit, and we discovered more and more about the disease, and we understood it better. And then in 1882, we figured out that it was infectious. And then by the 1950s, we had treatments for it. And then we also developed lots of different tools, diagnostic tools like chest x-rays, and we kept walking up the staircase. And the truth is that by abandoning our commitments, our foreign aid commitments in the last few weeks, we've tumbled down the staircase. I think the most recent estimate is that we'll see a 30% rise in multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, and almost all of those people will die, unfortunately. And so instead of seeing 1.25 million people die of TB next year, we'll see 1.5 or 1.6, and that will continue to grow as long as the need that the U.S. government was very generously meeting goes unmet.
What do we do about it? I mean, John, you wrote the book.
Yeah.
You chose to become an authority on this topic.
Yeah, I did, I guess. What do we do about it, Adam? We fight for it. We fight for the most vulnerable people in the world, and we try to be their megaphone, and we try to listen to them, try to listen to their voices. One of the things I think about all the time is this young woman who was a big fan of my books, so I write about in the book, Tuberculosis. She was a big fan of The Fault in Our Stars, and she was rereading it in the last days of her life, and I didn't hear her call. I didn't hear her shouting that this drug that could have saved her life and could save so many lives, called bedaquiline, was unaffordable for her, and she was denied access to it by the Indian government. I didn't hear that call, and I think about that a lot. And so I think we have to hear the calls of the people like Henry Ryder, of the people he supports who live with tuberculosis and other diseases of injustice, because to be clear, TB certainly isn't the only disease of injustice. Malaria, HIV, typhoid, cholera is a disease of injustice. Cancer is a disease of injustice. If you look at a map of poverty in Indianapolis and then look at a map of cancer rates, it's the same map. And so there's no question. We don't have to go to Sierra Leone to see healthcare injustice. We see plenty of it here too. To me, I guess the answer of how we respond is that we reach out to the people who do have some say in whether or not we reinstate foreign aid, and we ask them to do so.
You've been using your megaphone a lot with incredible impact to do that. You're ambivalent about your megaphone. Why?
I do feel weird about my megaphone because it's really easy to talk. There's two reasons. It's really easy to talk over people, right? So instead of lifting up other voices, you can talk over them, which can be harmful. And then the other thing is it's really easy to say hurtful or harmful things. You can say them by accident even, because you think you're just talking. But to everyone else, it's like this. It's like I have a microphone and you don't. And so everyone else hears it as shouting. So you have to be very careful, I think, what you shout. And I do try to be careful, but sometimes I mess up, especially when it comes to soccer. So like I think that I have my emotions under control, and then I say something terrible to a Manchester United fan who loves his family, you know? And is probably a nice person, no woos. Not for Manchester United. No, I'm just kidding. I understand. You're a person too. You love your family. You're just like me, except you root for Manchester United.
There's at least one person in the room who started watching soccer because of you.
Probably, yeah. Oh, well, thank you. Hopefully you started watching fourth tier soccer, so you're really good good stuff.
So John, I think a lot of people could look at this topic and think, this is going to be a depressing book. It's not.
Thank you.
And
I really didn't want it to be depressing.
No, I mean, it's everything that you were brilliant at. It is a deep dive into history. It's micro sentences that make many of us who occasionally write things wish we could write like that. It's motivating too. I felt fired up reading this book. Talk to us about how you maintain hope in such trying times.
Well, to me, hope is not some like abstract idea that's optional, because I spend a lot of my life pretty proximal to despair and hopelessness. And so to me, hope is a prerequisite for my survival. So I have to find it. I have to find it all the time. I was talking to the great tuberculosis writer, Vidya Krishnan. She wrote a beautiful book about TB called Phantom Plague. It's mostly about TB in India and some of the people who tells the story of some of the people who live with TB in India. And Vidya said, where I come from, hopelessness is a luxury. And I don't want to indulge in that luxury, I guess. And the other thing is that I think despair is incredibly powerful because it has a lot of explanatory power. Like it explains the whole universe, right? Like the reason you shouldn't do anything is because nothing matters. The reason you shouldn't get out of bed in the morning is because nothing matters. The reason that everyone is evil and sucks is because everything is evil and sucks. Like that's such a powerful explainer of the human condition. It's just that it doesn't happen to be true, right? Like it doesn't happen to be accurate. The truth is so much more complicated and heartbreaking and beautiful than that. The truth is that, you know, people are also capable of extraordinary compassion and sacrifice and generosity, and simultaneously we are capable of monstrosity. I don't know what you think about it, Adam, but I think a lot is about how close we feel to suffering, how proximal we are to the suffering of other people. And when we are close to suffering, we're incredibly generous. You know, I see GoFundMe's all the time because instead of a healthcare system in the United States, we have this thing called GoFundMe. And I see, agreed. And I see GoFundMe's all the time where people are incredibly generous, raising money for surgeries or for needed healthcare, or for any other thing. You know, we're raising money so somebody can go to summer camp, and people are incredibly generous. But then when we feel distant from suffering, we can tell ourselves like, well, those people aren't like us, or those people are different from us, or feel different from us. Then we can really be quite monstrous.
It's amazing how different the narrative often is from that reality that you're describing. I'm thinking back to 2020 when all the media headlines during the pandemic were about people hoarding hand sanitizer and how selfish people are in times of crisis. And yet, if you look at the data, the default response to adversity from humanity is compassion and generosity. In 2021, the world literally got kinder. The global rates of volunteering went up, giving to charity went up, even the willingness of people to help neighbors and strangers spiked. Why don't we talk about that? How do we tell that story?
I don't know how we tell that story, but we have to maintain a belief that humans can be good news. Like, I know it's kind of hard to be in favor of humans right now, but we are awesome. Like, we are really, really cool. We are the only thing in the known universe that knows what's keeping the stars apart. We are the only thing in the known universe that's capable of having this conversation right now. And we're amazing. Yes, we can also be thank you. Yeah, we can also be difficult. We can also be terrible. But we are so amazing. We're so, like, we underrate our species so much, in my opinion. So I think we do need to tell that story, but a lot of times those kinds of stories don't make sense as a headline. You know, like, I think that if there was going to be the actual biggest news story of today, and I'll tell you, I haven't seen the news, so maybe this isn't true, but I'm pretty sure the actual biggest news story of today is that fewer children died today than any day in the last 6,000 years, where the population of humans was about 100 million. That's the biggest news story of the day. The biggest news story of yesterday, too. It's been the biggest news story for 30 years. It's been the biggest news story since I graduated from high school. And I will admit that part of where I struggle is knowing that it might not be the biggest news story for much longer.
So, John, I need to go back for a second. You made a comment about what keeps the stars apart. At first, I thought this was a crash course test. Wait, what does keep the stars apart? But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what is keeping people apart, because you're describing how important it is to see people's humanity up close. This book, I think part of the way that you bring tuberculosis to life is you introduce us to Henry, you make us care about Henry, you show us him in 3D as opposed to just covering the statistics. And we can't do that at scale with all the people that we need to show compassion toward. How do you think about solving that problem?
Well, we have shown an ability to build systems that include more people, right? We have not shown an ability to build systems that include all people. We have not shown an ability to build systems that reflect what we all know to be true, which is that all human lives have equal value. But we have shown an ability to build systems that include more people. And so that gives me a little bit of hope that we can continue to do that work, that we can make systems that are more inclusive. So I'll give you one small example of what I mean. When Shreya Tripathi died of tuberculosis when she was 19 years old, almost no one in impoverished countries could get access to bedaquiline, which is this critical drug for treating multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. And if you or I got multi-drug resistant tuberculosis tomorrow, we would immediately have access to all the bedaquiline we could want, because one of the great ironies of the contemporary tuberculosis situation is that, to borrow a line from the Ugandan Dr. Peter Mugeni, the disease is where the drugs are not, and the drugs are where the disease is not. So you or I would get access to bedaquiline, but Shreya was denied that access, and that's ultimately why she died. By the time she could access bedaquiline, her lungs were simply too scarred for her to survive. And most people, many people still die from want of bedaquiline. However, thanks to people like Shreya and her fight with her government, thanks to people like Funesa Kasile and other people who sued Johnson & Johnson and said you shouldn't be extending your patents forever beyond the 20 years that you should, the standard 20 years. This is a life-saving drug. It should be available for generic competition. And thanks to many of the people in this room who encouraged, in no uncertain terms, Johnson & Johnson to abandon those secondary patents, the price of bedaquiline has dropped by 60% in the last 2 years. When Henry got access to drugs like bedaquiline in 2020 and 2021, it was a miracle. And now it is not a miracle. And so I know we can build more inclusive systems. I know we can speed up the rate at which we get the newest breakthroughs to the people who need them most. I know that we can do that. It's just like, it's hard work. And I'm very, very grateful to be in that hard work with so many of the people in this room.
Okay, so that raises the question of how to do this effectively on social media. We see a lot of posts that do not have the intended impact. As a social scientist, I think about you almost A/B testing different messages to try to see what works and what's going to move the needle. I'd love to know what messaging is effective. Is it better, for example, to try to lead with encouragement and say, hey, we would love for you to save these lives? Is it more effective to threaten them and say, you do not want to feel the wrath of their criteria?
A little column A, a little column B, I'm afraid. I mean, I think encouragement is perspective, but having an example of something like what happened to Johnson & Johnson and what happened to Danaher is very helpful in having other conversations. So this is something that, folks do privately, but it makes it so that, folks who work in access to drugs and access to diagnostics can kind of go to leaders at companies and say, you probably don't want that, right? And so I do think that a certain amount of negative pressure is important, but encouragement is also really important. It's important to say, you have the ability to let the price of this drug or let the price of this test go down, and that would save a lot of people's lives. And I honestly think, I don't think people who work in pharmaceutical companies, they're not evil, they're great people. They're trying to expand access to, they're trying to develop new drugs and new tools to fight the world's biggest problems. They're trying to make sure that people can access that stuff. It's just that the systems that they work within prioritize the development of profit, right? Prioritize making sure that a drug is profitable. And it's very hard to make a tuberculosis drug profitable, especially if it's a new line of antibiotics that we don't want to be giving out to everybody who has TB. We want to be sure that we're using it judiciously. Well, that means that in order for the drug to be profitable, it has to be crazy, crazy expensive. I don't envy drug companies working inside of that system. The system is wrong. The system is valuing the needs of the market over the needs of human health. And at some point we have to say, like, there are times when markets are very effective and efficient, and there are other times when they aren't so efficient. And so that's what we started to do, or I should say we have started to do, because a lot of the funding, a lot of the public funding for new drugs and research into diseases, whether that's tuberculosis or cancer or malaria or diabetes, has been devastated in the last few weeks. But that's what we have tried to do, is use more public funding, to use public-private partnerships to encourage the development of these new tools. But when those tools are developed primarily with public money, my belief is that they should be made available to the poorest people in the world at cost. And so that's where I have a disagreement with some folks at pharmaceutical companies.
It seems like in your brain, there's a lot of energy around doing that. And I think the moral argument makes a ton of sense. You have also made the case that there's a financial argument. It makes sense?
Yeah. Well, think about how much money we used to spend on tuberculosis here in the United States, right? At the height of the tuberculosis crisis in America, there were almost as many people, I mean, this is incredible, but there were almost as many people in hospital beds who had tuberculosis as there were people in hospital beds for all other causes combined. And that's something that we don't spend money on anymore, because we don't have to, because we cured tuberculosis. And I think that's really important to understand, that like this is a curable disease. We could live in a world without tuberculosis, and if we did, we would live in a much more productive world. Many more people would be able to contribute. Think of someone like Henry, who was denied the opportunity to go to high school by his being in a tuberculosis hospital for 3 years, who had to take 20,000 pills to be cured of his tuberculosis. Think of all that he lost and all that we lost as a species because he was stuck in that hospital, unable to get the kind of care that he needed and deserved. And then think of Henry today and what he's able to do for his family, what he's able to do for his community as an advocate for tuberculosis, as a student at the University of Sierra Leone, as a son to his mother, as a caretaker for his family. Think of all that he's able to do as a result of having gotten access to that care. To me, that's like an individual story, but if you multiply that times 10 million people per year, you start to glimpse that this is, from a cost-benefit analysis, an amazing, amazing investment.
Seems pretty compelling to me, and I can't wait for many, many people to read the book and reach the same conclusion.
I hope so. I hope somebody with billions of dollars is on that list.
Rightfully so. I want to shift gears a little bit, John, to some other topics that I know will be of great interest to our audience. The first one is, it seems like you brought Henry into the conversation, but there's someone who normally comes on book tour with you who's not on this tour.
Right? Where is Hank Green?
Is he working on the live stream?
Where is vertical video sensation Hank Green? My brother Hank, the infectious disease doctors, I'm like, who's Hank? I love you guys. You're my people. No, I love my brother. He's amazing. Unfortunately, he's just as good as we think he is. He's incredible. He is in Ireland right now. He's in England and Ireland. Shout out Ireland. My kingdom for your passport. He's in Ireland right now, and he's planned this trip like a year and a half ago. So when I called him and I told him the release date, he was like, "I'm out." And I was like, "Well, I was kind of out for your last book, so it seems fair." So yeah, that's where Hank is. He's in Ireland right now.
Well, he's asleep, I think, but I did get a text from him this afternoon. I asked him if he had any questions that he felt needed to be asked of you. And he said, I love this. Let me think. And then he came back with two. The first one is, what is your favorite ink green creation?
That guy. I mean, Hank has made so much that I love. I'm going to say probably, I think that his novel, An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, really is an absolutely remarkable thing. It's so prescient. It's all so much of what was coming for us and what is still coming for us. And so I just absolutely love that book. So I'm going to say An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, but Hank's made so much stuff that I like. I could have said 2D Glasses. I could have said NerdCon, Nerdfighteria, which is one of the best weekends of my life. 2 people were there. I don't know. Hank is just a relentless force for good in this world, and I am really the tail to his comet. It is because you can't be anything else with Hank. I mean, he's so charismatic, and he's just like, "Hey, get in, loser. We're gonna build a maternal hospital," or whatever he says.
I don't think I've ever heard a younger brother call the older brother a loser so affectionately. Okay, question 2. He says this is the realer one. If you had to quickly prove to aliens that humanity was worth saving, what would you show them? And I want to modify this one. You can't say a football match. And you also can't show them the chart of declining child mortality.
Oh, that's my favorite chart, Adam! I already talked about how much I like that chart. I'm going to talk later about how much I like it. It's my favorite chart. It's the coolest thing we ever did as a species. Dang it. Okay. I'm going to show them a video. I'm going to show them a video that I saw on Reddit a few days ago. There's a sea turtle. It's stuck in the rocks. And a man goes down and he helps the sea turtle. And he has absolutely no reason to do this. He puts himself at considerable risk. He puts himself in danger to get this sea turtle out of the rocks, and the sea turtle's flappers. He's got his head out, panicking. This man very calmly wiggles the sea turtle out of the rocks, pushes the sea turtle into the sea, and then allows the sea turtle to swim away again. Because yes, we cause so much destruction. We are a force of absolute destruction in this world, but we are also a force of construction. We are also a force of good. And so I would show them that, and I would say, look, we're both. Let us live.
Love it, but they might just save the sea turtle.
Yeah. They'd be like, I like the turtle. Not sure about you guys.
John, I think a lot of people in the audience are really curious about what makes you tick. And we've talked over the years, I think it's been almost a decade since we first met, about what motivates you and how you find your own motivation. Can you enlighten us a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I like to make gifts for people. I like to make stuff as a gift. I want stuff to be a gift. And then the coolest thing about making a gift for someone, whether it's a video or a book or whatever it is that then they give me a gift in return, which is the gift of their attention and their time. And not only that, they bring their deepest selves to the stuff that I give them, which is incredible. Right? Like every Vlogbrothers video, someone will respond with something unbelievable that I never could have imagined. Every time I read a book, somebody responds with a depth of feeling that I never could have imagined. I just saw a review. Don't read your Goodreads reviews unless you're me, then it's fine. I read my Goodreads reviews. It's very bad. It's a very bad habit. if you become an author, never do this. Do as I say. Some of my author friends are here tonight. Do as I say, not as I do. But I do read my Goodreads reviews sometimes in moments of weakness when I'm tired. And somebody said today talked about losing their brother to tuberculosis. And, you know, you have to have such generosity to bring that memory and that pain to my story, to bring that to my book. You have to be yourself so generous toward me and my book to share that. And I see that over and over again, whether it's with The Fault in Our Stars or Turtles All the Way Down. People bring their deepest selves to my stories and are so generous in the way they respond to them, and that's honestly what motivates me.
I'm grateful to hear that because I've been thinking lately about just putting in some Goodreads reviews in case you ever read them.
So also don't. I'm not even going to say what I actually do. It's too terrible. Because then, I'll tell you. You have to promise not to do anything. You have to promise not to write a 1-star review of the Advocacy reviewed, okay? But what I actually do, and this is so horrible, what is wrong with me, Adam? I would love for you to tell me as a psychologist.
I'm not that kind of psychologist.
What is wrong with me? I sort by 1 star. And I read those. What is wrong with me? Now, do not bring down my Goodreads average by writing a 1-star review and being like, I love you, Joe. Don't do that. I promise that I'll only read 5-star reviews for the next 6 months.
I actually think there's a method to your madness because the 3-star reviews are the ones that really stink.
Oh yeah, I got a 3-star review, Adam. And thank you for mentioning that. Let me tell you a review I got on Goodreads yesterday.
I did not know this is where we're going.
His most impactful and beautiful book to date, 3 stars. Were the other ones that bad?
Wow, that's painful. How do you deal with that kind of criticism?
Poorly, Adam. I deal with it poorly.
Can you elaborate? What do you say to yourself? What do you think? How many months do you spend?
Okay, when I'm being a good person, and I don't read Goodreads reviews, and I'm at my best. When I'm at my best, what I say is, "Oh, this wasn't for them." And I didn't make the gift hoping that I made the gift hoping that someone would love it, but I didn't make the gift like under the requirement that you would love it, right? Like that's such a weird way to give a gift, to like give a gift and be like, you better like it. Just you make the gift, you put it out in the world, and what comes, and what doesn't come. And that's when I'm well, that's how I respond to it.
I like it. And then you have a returns and exchanges department, and you just expect a certain number of people will send back your gift.
Exactly. Or just like receive it. Look, the other thing is that you can tell yourself with some accuracy that like some people just don't read generously, right? Like I remember when I was in high school, I wrote this paper about how bad The Great Gatsby was. And just that it was this like crack book about rich people and their stupid rich people problems. No. I heard a woo. It's a good book. Gatsby's not the problem. I was the problem. That's my opinion anyway. I might be wrong. You might be right. But yeah, so I think like sometimes you need a generous reader as well, and maybe the person wasn't feeling the vibes.
Love it. Well, on that note, speaking of generous readers, we have some audience questions here that I cannot resist asking. So I think it's time. Can we start with the game that you launched with Dr. Pepper and connect things to tuberculosis, please?
Oh yeah.
All right. So I've got a list for you. If everything is tuberculosis, first one is, how does it relate to the Philadelphia Eagles?
I can't do that directly off the top of my head, I'm sorry to say, but there have been several NFL players who died in TV. Like in the early days, not recently. There's a recent footballer, European footballer, like soccer player, Thiago Silva, who almost died on TV just a few years ago in Russia when he was playing for Spartak Moscow, and then he came back stronger than ever and became one of the best players in the world once he didn't have tuberculosis anymore. But yeah, I'm sorry, I can't do the Eagles.
All right, next request, Taylor Swift.
That's easy. What's that line, like, take me to the lakes where the poets go to die? On the lakes, is that close? Thank you. So one thing you don't want to do is piss off the Swifties. Yeah, I mean, that's, the poets went to die there because, like, the poets went to the Lake District to try to recover their health from tuberculosis and then died of tuberculosis. That was when tuberculosis was heavily romanticized, which I think Taylor is engaging with in that lyric. And tuberculosis was heavily romanticized in the 18th and 19th centuries. And one of the ways we saw this was that, like, Percy Shelley wrote John Keats and said, well, it's a bummer that you have this consumption. I'm paraphrasing. It's a bummer that you have this consumption. But it does tend to strike people who write great verses as you have done. Which has always struck me as curious because Shelley knew that he also had consumption. So he was a little bit like, and I have done.
Did anyone else catch that John is on a first name basis with just Taylor?
Yeah, it's true, right? She and I go way back. We do. I mean, we hung out for the first time on the 1989 tour, not to brag.
All right, next one to connect, Liverpool FC.
Again, hard, and I already shared my Thiago Silva fact, so we're going to have to move on.
All right, shifting gears question-wise. There was somebody in the audience who did something exceptional today. This person says, I drove over 660 kilometers to come from Canada. Wow. Whoever you are, welcome. And no, we're not trying to annex you. The question is, will you ever bring your tours north of the border? I know you have border issues.
Thank you for acknowledging my border issues for the infectious disease doctors in the audience. In 1994, I was denied entrance into Canada for insufficient funds. I didn't have a credit card or anything. I just had $42, a loaf of bread, 2 gallons of root beer, and 2 liters of root beer and some peanut butter. And I want to be clear, I would have been fine. That's all you need for a couple days in Canada. But I was denied entrance to the border, and I never thought this would be a big deal. But then the next time I went to Canada, they put me in a windowless room, and they were like, have you ever been denied entrance to Canada? I said yes, and they said, what was the reason? I said, insufficient funds, and we had a long conversation, they let me into Canada. Little did I know that every time I go to Canada for the rest of my life, I'm put into the windowless room, and I meet the next Mountie, and the next Mountie says, have you ever been denied entrance to Canada? And I say yes, and they say why? And I say insufficient funds. And they say, your circumstances seem to have changed, and I say, yes. We have a long conversation about whether or not I intend to stay in Canada longer than my agreed upon time, and I say no, except when I go this time, maybe I'll be like, maybe. I don't know. Been thinking about it. Yeah, so yeah. I would love to take a tour to Canada. We last went to Canada in 2017. We went to beautiful Vancouver, BC, and I love Canada. It's a great, independent, sovereign nation.
All right, next question. English teacher from New Jersey.
I love an English teacher.
Speaking of
I told you we over-index on teachers.
active tourists across that border in Philly. The speaker says, thanks for all your crash course videos. How do you suggest teachers bring meaningful literature about and from marginalized voices when getting pushback in this political climate?
It's so hard right now, and I'm so sorry that it's so hard because it's so important. I can't tell you how important it was to me to read Zora Neale Hurston and Toni Morrison and Sandra Cisneros in high school. It changed my life. It changed my life to read Angels in America by Tony Kushner, a heavily banned play. It changed my life to read Kurt Vonnegut novels. It changed my life to read John Updike. It changed my life to read Michael Chabon. Like these authors who are so often excluded from our contemporary conversations because of the political climate are critical reading for young people, because they have to understand that literature is not some cold, dead, distant place. And for me, Toni Morrison helped me understand that. I remember reading Song of Solomon and thinking, oh my God, books can do this? Books can be this? It was an incredible feeling. It was so special for me. And so my suggestion to you is that you find a way to do it. And I don't know how to tell you how to do it because it's so hard right now. And I'm so sorry how hard it is. It's really difficult and it's scary. And I'm sorry that your livelihood is threatened by these acts, random acts of book banning, as I called it earlier, because it does seem so random and capricious and unfair to deny kids access to really wonderful literature. The truth is, as a teacher, you are the expert that we have trained and hired to know what kinds of books are going to resonate with kids. And we need to let you do your job. So that's why I'm suing the state of Iowa right now. That's why there are lawsuits from Penguin Random House in Florida and other states to push back against these incredibly capricious and punitive book bans so that you can do your job. And I hope that you're able to do that job because it is so important.
Well, John, you're underselling yourself here because a lot of people in this audience see you as a teacher. And there's a question about that, which is, through your books and your YouTube content, is there a lesson you learned from a teacher in your life that you carry with you today?
Oh, so many. My great teacher, Don Rogan, who passed away recently, told me once, never predict the apocalypse. You're almost certain to be wrong, and if you're right, no one will be around to congratulate you. Found that very helpful. I think about my teacher, Perry Lentz, who told me on the last day of my college career, you don't have to go to law school. He was like, you can go to law school and you can have a very productive and wonderful life, but you don't have to. And I was like, oh, that's good to know. I thought I had to. But I also think about my teachers in elementary school and middle school. I had this wonderful middle school teacher who took me aside and she said once, I would have read your story out loud, but I know you wouldn't want me to. And I just want you to know that you're going to be okay. And I know you're not going to be okay in the short run, but you're going to be okay in the medium run. And that meant a lot to me.
I think for the rest of the time, we can just let the audience applaud you. But I do have more questions, or they have more questions. A librarian wants to know, what was your research process like for this book?
Oh, it was so fun. I mean, there was on one hand just like reading about history and reading medical journals and reading old papers from 1882 and just the thrill of that. But then on the other hand, and I mean that, I realize that sounded like a joke, but it is pretty fun for me. And then on the other hand, there was this incredible privilege of being able to talk to tuberculosis experts when I had questions. I remember there was this person who kept getting mentioned in all the papers I was reading, Dr. Carol Mitnick, and I had a bunch of questions about tuberculosis that I couldn't find answers for. And so finally I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to email Carol Mitnick. I'm going to shoot my shot. And I emailed her like 9:30 p.m. on Wednesday, and she wrote back at 9:32 p.m. and she was like, can I call you now? That's the great thing about TV people. Like, they're ready to talk. They've been dying to talk. And so she became a great source for the book. Dr. Jerome Tefera, the Ethiopian doctor who saved Henry's life in Sierra Leone, became a great source for the book. So much of that research was really joyful because it was done in community, and there's so much joy to be found in working in community, working in partnership with people.
John, speaking of joy, there is a burning question about what awesome socks you're wearing today.
I am wearing awesome socks. They're from a few months ago. They're blue and yellow, and I don't really know what they're about. They've got some fish on them. You know them. For the infectious disease doctors in the room. My brother, in addition to having the adventure of 2D glasses that render three-dimensional movies in a crisp 2 dimensions, also started a sock club called the Awesome Socks Club that donates 100% of its profits to the
Okay, that goes to another question, maybe from one of the doctors in the room. How do you fight burnout, especially when you're working on multiple projects all the time?
Or one of the teachers, or one of the librarians, or almost any of us, I suspect. For me, fighting burnout is about finding meaning, and meaning can be found in very small ways. Like if I have to do an annoying presentation, if I have to make like an annoying PowerPoint, as I sometimes do in my work, I'll tell myself, well, this is meaningful for the people I'm making it for. This is important for the people I'm making it for. And so that's how I fight burnout, is trying to find a sense of meaning in my work.
And what about when you don't know who your work is for?
Then it's harder. It is harder, but like a lot of times I don't know who my work is for. I didn't know who this book was for. I mean, who's going to read a book about tuberculosis? I guess y'all. But it was hard, and I guess I found meaning in the work itself. You know, like in doing the work, in having, like Zadie Smith calls writing something to do, and just like having something to do can be meaningful intrinsically.
John, one of the hardest parts of writing is having to conclude that it's done and not be able to edit anymore. Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and wish you could edit one of your books?
Oh my God! I mean, I would delete them.
Please don't.
And rewrite them from scratch and make them radically different and probably much worse. I remember W.H. Auden did that. He edited all of his poems and made them much worse. This is the all-time banger W.H. Auden line, "We must love one another or die." He changed to "We must love one another and die," which is true, but so much worse. So yeah, I mean, there's a copyright date on those books for a reason. I can't touch them anymore. I'm not allowed to.
There's nothing though that you would do differently now.
There are tons of things I would do differently.
You have to tell us.
No. I mean, I used the word deadpan 37 times in Looking for Alaska. And I cut it to one. It's an obvious answer.
All right, get this man a thesaurus. May I? Okay, John. A bunch of people want to ask: is there a resource that is underutilized in the fight against TV?
Our attention is the most underutilized resource. It's true. I think there may be folks from Partners in Health here and from TV fighters here on their way out who you can meet and talk to and learn from and sign up for that stuff. Go to tvfighters.org to learn more about what the TV fighters are doing. They're an incredible group. Go to PIH.org to learn more about what PIH is doing. Our attention matters so much because we solve the problems we pay attention to and we don't solve the problems we don't pay attention to. On some level, it's not quite that simple, some problems are quite hard, but the problems that are relatively easy to solve, that are just resource problems, like tuberculosis, it's not that easy to solve. I'm simplifying it considerably. The infectious disease doctors in the room were like, what now? But the problems that we can solve, we tend to solve when our attention is focused on them. So your attention is incredibly powerful. Much more powerful than I think we tend to understand, which is why so many social media platforms have made so many gajillions of dollars by monetizing it.
Okay, so let's turn our attention back to where we began, which was with Henry. Tell us about where he is now and how we can help more Henrys.
So Henry is doing great. He's a junior at the University of Sierra Leone. He's almost done with his exams for this semester. I know, I'm really excited for him. He has been in it. You have to go through, he's takes classes at night, he's got to study all the time, it's really, really hard. He does this cool thing where he goes camping with his buddies and right before finals and they study for a week, just cram for a week together, which I think is so lovely. Studying in community is so much better than studying in isolation. But he's doing really well. His mom, Maisatu, is doing really well, and they take care of each other and provide for each other in really profound ways, thanks to the generosity of folks in this community and elsewhere. Henry and Maisatu were able to move into a much nicer home. They have a really good house. Henry wishes for some things still, of course. There's still ways that his life is very precarious, and I should say that he depends, as so many people do, for part of his really essential post-tuberculosis healthcare on funding that has traditionally come from the US government, and that has made his life much more precarious, as is the case for so many millions of people. In terms of how we can help more Henrys, we help more Henrys by curing more tuberculosis, and we know how to do that. There's an acronym for it, like there is for everything in global health, STP. You search for cases, you treat the people you find, and you offer their close contacts preventative care. So with 1 month of antibiotics, you can prevent tuberculosis so you never get sick. And if you do that, you stop that chain of transmission. Instead of 10 or 15 people getting sick from that one person being sick, no people get sick from that one person being sick. And that's how you end tuberculosis. That's how we ended tuberculosis in the United States. That's how we're going to end tuberculosis globally. And so I would encourage you to check out programs that are offering comprehensive tuberculosis care and support them if you're in a position to. Partners in Health has a wonderful project in Lesotho right now that's offering comprehensive tuberculosis care to entire communities and hopefully eventually to the entire country, to prove that even in places where tuberculosis rates are extremely high, this disease is optional and we can live in a world without it.
John, you have an incredibly passionate and loyal following here. What's your greatest hope for the future for everyone in this room?
I'm already so proud of y'all. I mean, you've already come so far, you know? Every day I hear from people who started watching our videos when they were kids and now they're adults, and I feel this great sort of semi-paternal joy. I'm just like, I'm so proud of you. Look at you. Look at all you've done. Look at all you've made it through. Look at the education that you sought. Look at the things you had to overcome. Look at the people you love. Look at the people who love you. And it just makes me feel a lot of joy. My hope for you is my hope for anyone, that you're able to love and be loved, to understand and be understood, and to know and be known as fully as you wish to be.
Well, John, I think it's safe to say that your fans are living proof that Philly really is the city of brotherly love. But I also think you are an extraordinary catalyst for more love in the world, and I think we need a hell of a lot of that right now. I cannot thank you enough.
Adam Grant, everybody, thank you so much. All right, so we're nearing the end of our time together tonight, which is a great regret of mine, but you know, you have babysitters and whatnot. We're nearing the end of our time together tonight, but I don't blame you if you feel like we're also nearing like the end of our time together. That is to say, you may sometimes feel, as I do of late, that the world is a little bit falling apart and whatnot. As the noted theologian Timothy Chalamet recently put it, societal collapse is in the air. He really said that. What a beautiful man. Inside and out. I mean, after all, we know the world will end. A while back, my then 9-year-old daughter found out that in about 1.5 billion years, the sun will become a red giant and will almost certainly engulf the earth. And that was a real bummer of a day in the Green household. So yeah, I know it will end for each of us, for all of us, for our planet. But not yet. Not today. My friend Henry loves the verbs encourage and discourage. And right now, I will confess I am very discouraged. I feel that my courage is being dragged down by all sorts of forces, especially by those who argue or act as if some human lives are more valuable than others. How can we respond hopefully to a moment where hope does not feel rewarded or justified? How can we imagine better worlds when so many power structures seem intent upon making worse ones? I mean, one recent estimate holds that by cutting off all US-related tuberculosis funding, we'll see 30% more drug-resistant TB, and that's just one disease among many. And declining human health is just one issue among many. So it's easy to feel like this is the end of history, and I don't blame you if you feel it. There's a dread about our historical moment, a general feeling that horror is here and worse is coming, and I feel that too. I mean, why are we even here? Just to witness suffering? Just to worry? Sometimes it does feel that way. But I think while we are in this moment of not yet, we are here to be with each other in the deepest sense, to help others feel less alone, and to allow others to help us feel less alone. I believe we are here to accompany each other through the joys and travails of humanness, through the wonder and the precarity. We do not live at the end of history. We live in the middle of history. I argue in this book that we are products of history, but we are also ourselves historical forces. And together, we can change the arc of our shared human story. I've seen that happen, and now I'm going to mention the chart that Adam said I couldn't mention. The year I graduated from high school, 12 million children died under the age of 5. Last year, fewer than 5 million did. That progress wasn't natural or inevitable. It happened because millions of people are working together to make the world safer for children. And that is my hope. I know that today feels like the end of the story because it's the last day we've lived through so far. But today is not the end of the story. Today is the middle of the story, and it falls to us to make a better end. My friend Amy Cross Rosenthal, who died of cancer a few years ago, knew this better than anyone I've ever met. Amy used to ask people to sing an old song from World War I, sung to the tune of the New Year's Eve song, Auld Lang Syne. British soldiers in the trenches, horrified by the pointlessness of war, would sing, "We're here because we're here because we're here." And Amy changed the meaning of that song without ever changing the words. She turned it into a kind of battle cry for hope. Maybe it's true that we can't say with certainty why we are here, but we can nonetheless celebrate being here, especially in community, because that song, when sung together, takes on an entirely different meaning, at least for me. And so if you'll indulge me, I'd like to close together by singing it right now. We're here because we're here, because we're here, because we're here. We're here because we're here, because we're here, because we're here. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I love you, Philadelphia. Thank you guys for being here. I got to go. Bye.